Hi there, folks. Welcome to my Retro Media Room. Today, I wanted to take a look at 10 original Xbox games that are absolutely fantastic classics that are worth going back to revisit or playing for the first time through backwards compatibility. Now, everything I say from here on and show gameplay of and everything is on Series X. That's all I'm referring to in terms of what I'm showing and talking about. Anything below that, from Series S to Xbox One X to Xbox One and so on, you'll have to find out for yourself how well they look and perform on those. They're generally good. They're generally better, of course, than playing them on OG Xbox hardware. But just for the sake of clarity, everything you're seeing and everything I'm talking about is referring to the highest tier, which is a Series X. So just bear that in mind. And to start off our list, we're going to take a look at Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. This is my personal favorite Star Wars game of all time. And I would actually objectively argue that this is the greatest Star Wars game ever made. In terms of the graphics, the original maximum resolution was 480p, which was actually quite good at the time. Now it's a upscaled 4K. And sometimes the older games with old muddy textures, the 4K upscaling doesn't translate that well. In this case, it actually translates beautifully because the original textures are actually very good and high res for the time. The colors look good because auto HDR helps, which is applied to all backwards compatible games. The character models are detailed. The worlds are detailed. It looks really fantastic, actually. There's a lot of scale, a lot of variety, great art direction. Just across the board, it is a very good looking game. With the sound, it's about as authentic as you could ever hope for, especially from the time. Whether it be the battle sounds, the music, and the voice acting is excellent. You really get into the characters. You're never taken out of the experience by the voice acting performances across the board. All NPCs, everybody. It is triple A when it comes to voice acting and sound quality. But the most dramatic difference here is the frame rate and performance. So this game would not be able to run on PlayStation 2 or even GameCube. This is a very ambitious game that even the Xbox struggled to handle at the time. Worth doing so, but it was kind of rough, particularly with the frame rate. It's an unlocked frame rate, so you could see anywhere from single-digit frames all the way up to 60. Rarely would you see 60, but it would definitely run smoother at times, and then other times it'd run really, really bad. So that's just how it was. Now, because it's an unlocked frame rate, it's kind of a hidden secret blessing, because years later, when you run it on more powerful hardware with more horsepower, well, now it's a locked 60, essentially. Give or take some engine stutters and hiccups. That's just nothing you can do about that without retooling or remaking the game entirely. It's just how it is. It's not a big deal. But in general, it is a 60 FPS experience, and it is night and day from what it originally was. And that improved frame rate aids the gameplay substantially. So running around, solving puzzles, doing side missions, talking to other characters, all these things, there's a smoother, more enjoyable experience. But especially the battle system, that's the biggest thing here, because you do a lot of fighting. It's a very good battle system. It's kind of a real-time action RPG hybrid, you could say, because it's real time in terms of you run around, you select your targets. It's all, you go from, you see your target, you run up to it, you fight. There's no separate screen for fighting. But it is automatic in terms of you select the enemy you want to fight, and if you don't do anything else, your character goes on auto fight, and it does automatic animations, and it's kind of a roll the dice of, are you going to miss or block and things like that. But you do select different actions and different moves, and you can, health items, grenades, or whatever the case. You can use blades, lightsabers, blasters, whatever you want. You're very customizable. You can be a man or woman. You can be good or evil. It's all up to you. And there's multiple endings from being good or evil. How the characters, how deep the characters you get with talking to them and unfolding their backstories. The world building in this game from the story is absolutely fantastic. It's 20,000 years before the original movies, so there's a lot of creative liberty here in terms of the world building and universe they created, and to me, it's just as good as the movies. So this is through and through. All these things are absolutely fantastic: gameplay, story, graphics, sounds. Now, once you get to Dantooine and you train to become a Jedi, and you're in these environments and the music, and you've got force powers now and a lightsaber, and you're exploring becoming a Jedi and training and figuring your character out, it is quite magical, actually. This game is an absolute classic, one of the greatest games. It's in my top 10 of all time. And I can't recommend it enough. RPG fans, Star Wars fans, whatever the case, this game is an absolute classic. I can always go back and play. I could play this game once a year, no question, easily. Always enjoy it. Absolutely check it out. Next is the sequel, Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. So right off the bat, you can see there's some presentation differences, mainly being not as good is because it has a frame rate cap at 30 originally, so therefore it is still 30, whereas the other one was unlocked and goes up to 60. So Obsidian took the mantle on this one, just like they did with Fallout New Vegas after Fallout 3. BioWare moved on to another title after the first Knights of the Republic, and Obsidian took the reins. And Obsidian, this is some of their best work. Some people prefer this over the first one. I like the first one a little bit better. I think the story is more consistent, but this is still a really solid game with some actual gameplay improvements. Now, everything applies here once again. Same battle system, just with additional features and tweaks and new animations. Same graphics engine, only with the differences already mentioned. The game has a bit of a rough beginning that you got to kind of get through. And once you do and you get to the rest of the game, it's actually really amazing. Now, for me, the story is not quite as good as the first one. Unfortunately, due to development issues, it was meant to be kind of a Empire Strikes Back, where it was not meant to end yet. There was meant to be a third one, never happened. So the story kind of gets cut off in the end, and there was content cut that would have had more story that we never got, that we were going to get on the Switch and never got that either. So there are issues with the story in terms of it not being quite finished. So yes, the ending is a little bit abrupt. It's a little bit lackluster or anticlimactic, but it's not a deal breaker by any means. It is a fantastic game. With all the story that is there is very good. The characters are good. The worlds you explore, the gameplay is improved. There's more to the combat. There's no level caps. You're able to do more with your character, all sorts of stuff. So the game is fantastic. If you love the first one, you should absolutely play this one as well. Now, one thing I'll bring up, though, there are a couple of pretty bad bugs in the game that I'm going to teach you right now how to deal with. It's very simple. You turn off the autosave feature, and you never use them. You strictly use your manual saves. You do it the old school way. You do the 3 to 5 save rotation of manual saves, and you only use those and you save often. That's it. What happens is if you use auto saves, there's a good chance the game will eat inventory items and they disappear forever, which is really bad because you'll have like a special weapon or armor or attachment that is one of the game and it's gone. So do not use automatic saves, only use manual saves, and that should keep that from happening. And the last thing, there's one bug on Knights of the Republic 2 where it transitions from one scene to the next scene when you're the droid, and it transitions going back to the humans in the beginning of the game. Just make sure and save right before you're about to exit that scene with the droid, because it can go black screen and crash the game. So just save it in case, because if it does, just reload it, try again. If it makes it through, then you're good. But other than that, great experience. I've beaten both thoroughly on this way, and they're fine. It's worth it. So yeah, Sith Lords, Knights of the Republic 2, fantastic game, fantastic series. I wish there was a third one, but they went to the Old Republic MMO, which I do not care for. Like, if you're a fan of that, more power to you. I'm not into all that. I wish they would have made a proper, full, regular game for me. But either way, yeah, love these games, recommend them. Next is the reason why BioWare did not do the sequel to Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire. So this is kind of BioWare's opus. I remember reading in old interviews how this was the game that they really wanted to make. It's an original IP. It's a dynasty game set in ancient China. It's got a very mystical story and everything. So story's cool. Characters are fine. It's been a long time since I've beaten it all the way through, but I did beat it several times back in the day because it has really good gameplay, very fun combat. It's the same engine as KOTOR. So if you love KOTOR, Knights of the Republic, then you should absolutely check this game out. If you like the mechanics, you like the dialogue choices and the graphics and the combat. Now, the combat does differ a pretty good deal. I mean, you could, like I said, same engine, so it has a similar feel, but they do change it up a pretty good deal in this. You have different styles you can select with the D-pad from one style to the next in real time, which is cool. There's more customization and using weapons, not using weapons, using chi, and powers and techniques and move and mobility. Now, in terms of the enhancements for backwards compatibility, this also has the upped resolution, so it looks very sharp. And it kind of goes back to the first KOTOR in terms of it's got the 4:3 screen and 60 frames per second because it has an unlocked frame rate. So even though it was a little bit more polished than the first Knights of the Republic, because obviously they mastered the engine better, but it still would have pretty chuggy frame rate. So now that's cleaned up and it plays beautifully. So whether you're an old fan of Jade Empire or you want to get into a new RPG made in the West, absolutely recommend this game. You should check it out. Like I said, it's got robust combat, a cool story, good graphics. It is like Knights of the Republic is an Xbox exclusive game, and it's great in backwards compatibility. I've got this limited edition here that I actually forget. Let's see, it's got demos, and I just got it because I like the shiny cover to it, and I really enjoyed the game, so I made it a point to get this limited edition of the game that has a bonus disc and everything. That's right, bonus content. So yeah, very cool. But yeah, check out Jade Empire. Next is the franchise that defined bullet time in gaming, Max Payne. In terms of backwards compatibility features, the upscale 4K image quality looks very nice. The textures from the game hold up quite well because this was actually the closest thing to the PC version on consoles across the board. I mean, well, I say across the board is PS2 and Xbox, but PS2 version is quite bad in comparison. And same is going to go for Max Payne 2 here. Stay tuned. But not only does this have better textures than the PS2 version that's closer to the PC, but it also had an unlocked frame rate, and it actually ran at 60 a pretty decent amount of the time on the Xbox. PS2 is capped at 30. And speaking of bullet time, this game was clearly inspired by The Matrix and especially John Woo and his Hong Kong films, such as Hard Boiled and The Killer, which is ironic because once they actually did make a Max Payne movie starring Mark Wahlberg, I like Mark Wahlberg, but that movie is absolute and total garbage. Do not watch it. Which is sad because they literally laid out the blueprint for taking a game and translating into film. It is so heavily inspired by movies. It is literally a blueprint for taking a game and translating to movie or vice versa. And they managed to screw that up. So what a sad turn of events that was. But either way, in the story, you play as New York City detective Max Payne, voiced by the late and great James McCaffrey. Rest in peace. His voice has always been iconic, always will be iconic. To me, he'll always be Max Payne. It actually has a very film noir style story, very dark and mature, and his narration throughout is awesome as Max Payne. I actually like the comic book style storytelling aside from the in-engine cutscenes because there's no pre-rendered cutscenes here. Now, as you'll notice, the comic books, they have a pretty comical look to them, and the actors is because, well, they weren't actors. They were just developers modeling for the game. And even though we all know and love the creative director being Max Payne, his likeness being Max Payne, it was still pretty goofy and pretty comical. But hey, it's nostalgic and of the time. Otherwise, the voice acting across the board is pretty solid and fitting for the game and of the tone. And like I said, James McCaffrey is awesome as Max Payne. The action, of course, is the bread and butter of the game. The slow motion bullet time is super fun, super cool. The guns have a lot of oomph to them, and taking down bad guys and getting to the story. It's a fantastic game. It's not too long. It's not too short. The environments and the grittiness and the atmosphere. I mean, it's just got so many things going for it. Obviously, it's not a perfect game. It definitely has that early to mid 2000s feel in terms of, you're going to die, you got a checkpoint, you got to save, you got to get through certain parts, frustrating AI, this and that, whatever. It is a fun game. It is a third person shooter classic. It's not much is really ever mastered this segment of the genre outside of Max Payne. Max Payne, in my opinion, is still king. Even though there's been decent imitators, Max Payne will always be the best. And I'm looking forward to whatever 1 and 2 remake that they're putting out. So yeah, Max Payne, I played it since it first came out on my Xbox, and I played it on PS2 first, and was, I enjoyed it, of course. That's the only way I played it. And then I got on an Xbox, and that was it. That sealed the deal. I never purposely played it on PlayStation again after that because it was just so much better on Xbox. And next we have yet again another sequel, Max Payne 2: The Fall of Max Payne. Similar to Knights of the Republic 1 and 2, we go from a 4:3 to a widescreen, so that's a nice upgrade between the two. So the second one's visual really stand out with realistic, highly detailed textures, very similar to the PC. Obviously, it's not going to look quite as good as the PC, but it's the closest thing to the PC on consoles to this day. And with this backwards compatibility and the frame rate upgrades and the resolution upgrades, it is more than ever like the PC version. Right off the bat, you can see the production values in this have been drastically raised. They actually got professional models to do all of the different comic books. So the look of it is very film noir, really well done. The main menu gives you goosebumps with the music and the themes. James McCaffrey doing his thing as Max Payne is good as usual. And the other voice actors step up even further. Good story, interesting love story. This is a very, very good game with a cool story. The slow motion bullet time action is better than ever. They refined it even further with fancy reload animations when it gets intense enough, when you rack up enough bodies. It changes color. It's just more refined, and it's even better. And on top of everything else, it has ragdoll physics and physics from Havoc in the environments in general. So the action is that much more organic and chaotic, and it's awesome. To this day, outside of Max Payne 3 on 360, that is, these are the closest things to where you really feel like you're experiencing and playing the action of The Matrix and John Woo's Hong Kong films. Just the way the shootouts feel and the way the gun action feels, it's still like they're still the best. So I'm actually looking forward to, like I said before, these Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes. I hope they don't mess them up. I hope they keep them true to the originals with the modern update. But for now, we have these playable. This is the best possible way to play these on console. Now, obviously, PC is a little bit different. Those are the premium versions of the games. But if you're not willing to do that, check them out on backwards compatibility. Next is one of the most twisted games you'll ever play, Manhunt. Originally developed on the PS2, Manhunt is a Rockstar developed game with the same engine as Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. While it may have the same engine, it is very different in the type of gameplay and the type of game it is. The only thing that kept this game from being absolutely mainstream controversial, the likes of Night Stalkers and Mortal Kombat, was it flew under the radar for most people at the time. Brian Cox, who is the main villain here, has set you up in a whole slew and sets of scenarios to force you to defend yourself to survive against the gangs of psychopaths and criminals that are all trying to get you and hunt you down. All for the sake of his sick pleasure, as you can see here.
Under a rock someplace.
You're getting me all flustered here.
So as you can see, this is a very unsettling, dark, twisted game. But if it didn't have the gameplay and the mechanics to back it up, well, it'd be a little bit different. But when you strip away just the mere fact that it is a unsettling, twisted game, it's actually a very good game. It's stealth, it's combat. You have to use your wits, you have to use your brains, and the atmosphere. It is drenched in dread and atmosphere, and there's really nothing else like it out there. There is a sequel, but it's not as good, and it's heavily censored. It did get caught up in the controversy, but thankfully the first one here was virtually untouched. So it is what they intended, and it's very good. So when you combine the atmosphere, the graphics, the unique moves and executions that you have to do, that you're rewarded with by sneaking around and having proper stealth, it actually has pretty smart AI, effective stealth, crazy and scary, interesting bosses and scenario. There's a lot of things going on with this game. I was highly entertained from it beginning to end years ago when I played this. If you like dark, crazy, twisted intensity and you want something different, and you love Rockstar and you want to see that engine from the time kind of pushed to its maximum fidelity. And that's another thing. So the backwards compatibility, it runs at a nice 60. It looks very sharp. The engine has held up very well. And yeah, it's a really interesting game. You should check it out. Next is a Namco Xbox exclusive, Breakdown. So this is probably the most hidden gem of the list, because this really did go under most people's radar. While not a perfect game, and I'll explain why, it is absolutely worth checking out, and it is a standalone game that inspired the likes of Hardcore Henry in how it takes place exclusively from the first person all throughout the entire story. There's no cutscenes that take place in third person or other perspectives. It is strictly through your eyes, which was a unique way of telling a story at the time. And speaking of stories, this game, I won't give away any spoilers, but this game has some awesome twists. It's a super awesome sci-fi story with the compelling characters. That's what drives the heart of this game, is the story. And not only the story, but this actually has unique combat. Now, the gun mechanics in this are a little wonky, so that's one of the flaws in this game, that you're not going to fall in love with the shooting mechanics. You just kind of get through it. But that's not the primary means of combat. The primary means of combat, once you get far enough into the game, is the hand-to-hand combat in first person, which is actually done very well. Now, the number one thing I'm going to recommend to you is, if you do play this game, which I highly recommend, in backwards compatibility, it looks really sharp. It's a locked 30 FPS. I wish it were 60, of course, but it's natively 30 and it's locked at that, so it is consistent. It's very clean. The game visually holds up really well. It's very immersive because of how it is in the first person. But put the game on easy. Trust me, this is the game's biggest fault. If you play it on normal, or if especially hard, you will hate your life. Put it on easy. Easy feels like normal. Okay, as long as you do that and you save often, or whatever the case, you will enjoy the game just fine. Like I said, it's not perfect. It can be frustrating at times, but overall, it is absolutely worth it. When it's all said and done, the graphics, the story, the characters, the immersion, how unique it is, the story more than anything, that's number one. It's just an awesome game. Now, like I said, it's not perfect. It's rough around the edges in certain ways, especially, compared to the ease of play of newer games in terms of controls. And then because it takes some getting used to. There's some adjustments with the controls. There's, like I said, that's why you put it on easy. Makes it feel more of a normal experience. It's less frustrating that way. But overall, it is absolutely worth it. And another nice thing about it, that there's a hidden trailer in the game that you can only see after you've beaten it. I actually have that trailer on my channel in this video. So if you want to check out that trailer, it has a song from Trust Company on it. It's really, really cool. It's one of my favorite trailers of all time. Check that out if you want to get even more of a feel for the game. But yeah, highly recommend it. Check it out. Next is another Xbox exclusive, Crimson Sky's High Road to Revenge. So if you kind of missed that old school LucasArts feel of a game with quirky characters and witty dialogue and colorful, just LucasArts had a certain magic to it at the time. This actually has quite a bit of that feel, almost like it was made by former LucasArts devs. Maybe it was, I don't know. But certainly if you like flying games and flying combat, well, that's exactly what this is. You play a sky pirate, a ragtag group of sky pirates, and you do side missions, you collect other planes, and they all have their different weapons and abilities. The combat's fun. The controls are great. The graphics are really sharp, especially here in backwards compatibility. It's a 30 FPS game, but it's a very consistent 30 now. The game, it is a highly regarded, wonderful game. Even if you're not typically into flying combat shooters, this is worth giving a try, because I would consider it a good entry level for a flyer shooter, or the likes of Star Fox. I mean, it's not on rails like Star Fox, but in terms of it, you don't have to be a flying sim lover in order to like this. There's side missions. There's a main story, areas to explore. It's got great music. I mean, there's just so much going for this. I played it from beginning to end back in the day, and I've always really liked it. So if you want something that's a little bit different, with a lot of character and heart, and it's just fun to play and explore, and aerial combat, I mean, you can't go wrong with. You cannot go wrong. It's unfortunate that this is an IP that was never been revisited. It's an awesome game. If they made a modern sequel and did it right, it could actually be really awesome. So yeah, check out Crimson Skies. Next is a franchise born from the former devs of GoldenEye, TimeSplitters 2. So back in the day, there were devs that left Rare that worked on GoldenEye, and they formed their own studio called Free Radical. Then they made TimeSplitters, built from the ground up on PS2 as a launch title on PS2. And the thing that was interesting about TimeSplitters is not only its timeline jumping in terms of all the levels, and characters are from different timelines throughout history. So there's so many different variety of set pieces and events and characters and different things. But it was the fact that it was a 60 FPS shooter, which was not the norm at the time. So there were few and far between of first-person shooters that were 60 FPS. So now through backwards compatibility, when you play TimeSplitters 2, which was when it first went multi-platform, that's why we have it on Xbox here. Now we have a locked 60 FPS, which was obviously the original vision, was being able to play it in a locked 60, and it looks even sharper than ever. So this is a fantastic way of playing TimeSplitters on Xbox now. And not only does it have a robust campaign mode, it has also a fun local multiplayer deathmatch mode with a whole slew of characters to choose from. The game is a lot of fun. It's a very quirky game. It's not perfect. Some of it you can. It's like, oh, well, this is clearly a mid 2000s game. With the feel of the controls and stuff a little bit. But overall, it's a very charming game, a very fun game. It's worth going back and revisiting, especially if you want some nostalgia from that era, or if you just grew up with TimeSplitters like I did. So yeah, TimeSplitters 2, very interesting game, because as much as I love the first one, it was always unfortunate that it's to this day, it's still strictly on PS2. And but whereas TimeSplitters 2 here is a way of going back and revisiting TimeSplitters on modern hardware. And that's going to be the same case for our final game. And that leads to our final game, TimeSplitters Future Perfect. This is clearly the opus of the series, with vastly improved graphics that took advantage of the hardware outside of PlayStation 2 with the engine, better textures, better gun models, reloading animations, better controls. Because the second one kind of lacks some control options, and this fixed that. You can remap the controls any way you want. It feels great. The shooting feels great. This has vehicles you can hop into. The cutscenes are better than ever. It's just across the board an improvement from the previous games. It's unfortunate that this was the last TimeSplitters we ever saw, even though they really hit their stride with this one. Critics praised this game for a reason. It deserved all that praise because it's a solid game. And now, through backwards compatibility with a locked 60 FPS and high resolution, it's better than ever to play. Whether it be the first time or revisiting it, it's fantastic. So that was 10 Xbox games, original Xbox games, that are fantastic through backwards compatibility. They have so many frame rate and resolution upgrades that make them worth revisiting or playing for the first time. So I highly recommend these. There are, like I said, there's like 62, 63 others that are worth checking out. And there's many more on 360. So yeah, the backwards compatibility program on that Xbox has been the best we've ever seen. I wish PlayStation did it a little bit better. They're not, they've done some, but I wish they did it at the level that Microsoft has done. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And more than anything, please subscribe. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers so that I can become monetized and bring you more consistent content, because I want to keep relaying this information to you all, because I just love old school gaming, and I don't really only play a few games a year that I care about anymore in terms of new games. I just love going back to the old stuff and having some nostalgia, celebrating the legacy of games. And if you want to see more of that, please subscribe. So have a wonderful day, and God bless.